Hello viewers, this is the second part of the lecture based on Bharati Mukherjee's story, The Management of Grief. I have discussed in the previous lecture the main character Shella, who is the protagonist and narrator of the story, how she confronts that ordeal with perseverance. I will begin this lecture with the quote taken from Hamlet. Thou knowest it's common, all that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. The grim and inescapable reality of human life is that all life on earth is predicated on death. That is the profoundest and most awe-inspiring certainty in man's existence. The reconciliation with the course of life is very difficult. It has been said time heals many wounds, but this loss, this separation becomes the defining sadness of one's life. The death of the loved ones, especially sons and husbands. This is very great loss for a woman whose life revolves around her family. We all know that our time in this world is limited. And then eventually all of us will end up underneath some sheet, never to wake up. Yet it is always a surprise and shock when it happens to someone whom we love passionately. That is something with which we are never going to get used. So much we have heard about it. Theories, principles, philosophers, thinkers, all are talking about it. But we can never deny the fact that it has a devastating effect on the mind. There is difference between a natural death and an accidental death. Natural death can be accepted, or if death is taking place at a right time, it can be accepted. But if somebody dies and in an accident or by a terrorist attack or something has happened, then it becomes very difficult for the person to forget it, because now they are laying blame on that person. Bharati Mukherjee's story, The Management of Grief, deals with the life of Indo-Canadian community in Canada and the devastation they are facing because of the death of their dear one in airplane crash. The end of the story tells about Shella, Kusum, Ranganathan and Sikh couples. They have lost their dear ones in this crash, and this separation is unbearable for them. It seems to them that it was contrary to all natural laws. Parents are supposed to die before children, not the other way around. The story mainly revolves around the grief of Shella, whose husband and two sons are killed in a plane explosion. Through a process of deciding what parts of her culture to accept, she is an Indian, now she is settled in Canada. So what she thinks what she should accept and what she should reject or discard the culture from her life. She has a traditional culture in her, and she is now living from a very long time in a Western culture, and both have become the part of her life. The setting of the story is at a three place, begins in Toronto, moves in Ireland, then Shella comes to India, and then she goes back to Canada. The story in today's lecture I will begin when she comes to India with her friend Kusum. To assist her with her own efforts to honor and bury Kusum's dead family members, Shella leaves Ireland without any bodies, but Kusum takes her husband's coffin through custom. A customs bureaucrat detains them under suspicion of smuggling contraband in the coffin. In her first public expression of emotion, Shella explodes and calls him a bastard. She contemplates the change that has come in her, or maybe this change because of the trauma that has brought in her. She feels that earlier she was shy, sweet, as is been expected from an Indian lady. But now she has become so bold. She thinks maybe the foreign land has changed her. She has become so bold and outspoken. From Ireland, many of the Canadians, including Shella, came to India to continue mourning. Shella describes her parents are wealthy and progressive. They did not mind sick friends dropping by with condolences, though Shella cannot help but resent. Her grandmother, another story, she becomes a widow at a very young age. She is still following all the asceticism and she considers herself unlucky. She also considers Shella as an unlucky. So now Shella is saying it's a kind of the tag of being an unlucky widow is going to be very helpful for her. She has not to remarry. The people will be afraid to select a bride who was an unlucky widow. In India, for 3 months, she stayed after the disaster. Then she starts revisiting or rethinking about her Canadian life. Shella describes that she is facing some problem here in India. Now there are the two cultures in her. She's trying to manage and then she's contemplating her life. That she is not old, neither she is very old, nor she is very young. She is a 36 years old lady. Too old to start over and too young to give up. She thinks that her condition is like her husband's spirit, fluttering between two worlds. Shella describes the imperatives of custom felt by some of the men widowed by the Air India crash, the pressure to immediately remarry, and her own comparative luck in that no one will be seeking an unlucky widow as a new bride. She says, quote, I am comparatively lucky because of being unlucky. No one ever thinks of arranging a husband for an unlucky widow. Unquote. The fourth stage of management of grief is reconstruction. The people adopt different strategies to cope up with this. Some people join religious discourse, some people travel around the world, some people get involved in the creative work. But life never stops. It keeps on going. So the people are searching the different strategies to cope up with this grief. They are never away from the memory of the dead. It always haunts them. It's very difficult to wipe up the memory forever from the mind. But still, the people are trying different ways to come out of it. For this, what Shella did, she visited different places. She visited different clubs. She different hotels, resorts with her family to overcome her grief or to forget. Even she visited Varanasi, Kalighat, Rishikesh, Haridwar. She meets many astrologers and palmists. She wanted to have a cosmic consolation. 6 months after the crash, Shella describes how she saw her husband while making an offering at a temple. She meets the spirit of her husband. The mother is not ready to believe, so she doesn't want to share it with her husband, her mother, but she is sure that she has seen. And her husband is saying, do the work, start the work, which we thought to start together. Okay. Kusum, she has joined an ashram. She goes to her guru. She has a great faith in her guru. See, in India, the people, whenever they are troubled, they seek shelter in religion. The purpose of religious practices and various schools of Hinduism are to resolve human suffering. As long as the man is caught in the phenomenal world of transient objects and appearances and becomes attached to them, he has no escape from suffering. The religion helps him to overcome his suffering. But some people calls it is a way of running out from the realities, the bitter realities of the life. So this is the approach of Shella also. Shella thinks Kusum's asceticism as running away. She asks her, "Don't run away. Face the life." Kusum answers, "I'm not running away, but I am in search of inner peace. I'm searching inner peace, the truth of the life." Shella keeps to touch with Ranganathan, who has moved to Montreal and has not remarried. Now the people who have lost, immediately they get connected with the people who have also lost. So they create a kind of a community. So Ranganathan and Shella, they share a melancholy bond, but are comforted to have found new relatives in each other. At this point, Judith Templeton, a journalist, she is involved in her ambitious work of helping the Indo-Canadian community. Her knowledge is based on her reading of books, but she has a bookish knowledge. She is without warmth of human feelings. That's why she consults Shella Bhave. Shella Bhave can help her in helping these people. And she says that at this juncture, the people have reached towards the depressed acceptance. Shella doesn't agree with her, but she is a very sober lady. She says Judith Templeton is doing a very impressive work. Judith asked Shella to accompany her. Initially she was reluctant, but she agrees. They come to the house of an elderly couple, where on the way Shella sees and she is struck by the Indianness of the ghetto neighborhood. Here women, they are waiting for buses in sari. It seems to Shella that the Indians, they are still in India, even though they are in Canada. They have not forgotten their tradition. Now Shella tries to console these elderly people. Initially, they were not interested in her, but the moment she says she has also lost her family, her husband and children, immediately the couple, they trust her. The husband of that lady, that's the couple, the husband is not ready to take anything from the government, and the wife, she is not ready to believe her sons are dead. And here they have a cup of tea. Then she comes from there. Shella is not ready to be with Judith Templeton, who is unable to understand the plight and agony of the people. She moves away. Shella is now caught between two cultures, and the perspective of these two cultures, Indian and Western, are very different. Her family, who lives in India, believes she needs to remarry quickly because a woman should have a man to take of her. In Canada, the people pressure her to recreate a life that is centered on her wants and not caregiving. So in Canada, the people are asking her to be having a very individualistic approach to think about herself. And in India, they are saying that she can enjoy anything only when she will have her family. Western life pays more attention to individuality. The story ends with Shella. Now she is living a very quiet and joyless life in Toronto. She has sold her house, now shifted to a very small apartment. Kusum, meanwhile, writing to her, and then she is telling that she is in a Himalayan village where she has seen the reincarnation of her daughter. Dr. Ranganathan has moved to Texas, and he has taken a vow that he is never going to marry. And sometime he calls Shella. Now Shella is sitting in a bench in a park, and she decides that she will continue the journey which she has started with her husband. When a person experiences the death of a loved one, they will go through what is commonly known as the 7 stages of grief: shock and denial, pain and guilt, anger and bargaining, loneliness, the upward turn, reconstruction and acceptance. Judith Templeton is a character in the story. She quotes from a book on the management of grief that tells that there are stages to pass through. When somebody dies, there are the 4 stages the person faces: rejection, depression, and acceptance and reconstruction. So the people here now, at the end, they started reconstructing their life. Initially, they was not ready. Like elderly sick, he was not ready to accept the death of their sons. So Ranganathan says that it is parents' duty to hope. And Shella is also not ready to accept initially, but later on they have accepted. Shella finds that 6 months after tragedy, none of us still reject reality, but only a handful are reconstructing. She is shocked to see how quickly some of the men have taken on new families. One seeks realistic solution to problems posed by life without the loved ones. The people then try to find out the ways to fight with agony. They get involved in different kinds of activities, as we have seen here the people are doing. The bereaved soul will start to look forward and actually plan things for the future, because life never stops, life keeps on going. The loss and man's fight with the loss forms the underlying pattern of the story. To fight with harrowing circumstances without yielding to it is actually life. Life depends on our indomitable will, on our high spirit to fight with all the circumstances. Suffering, pain, loss are integral part of life, but the indomitable will of men can fight bravely with all these things. The calamities and catastrophe brought by death, by separation of dear ones, can be handled in a right way by knowledge and by self-restraint. In the conclusion of this lecture, I want to quote Sri Aurobindo. In Savitri, he says, "O death, I have triumphed over thee within. I quare no more with the assault of grief. A mighty calmness seated deep within has occupied my body and my sense. It takes the world's grief and transmutes to strength. It makes the world's joy one with the joy of God." Thank you.